I went I went to dumpsters and like picked out furniture and like refinished it, refurbished it. Like I started this business on a shoestring.
Right. Welcome, Genesis Nation, back again. I am really, really excited to have a very special guest with us, Dr. Courtney Gowin. And this human is not just a chiropractor. I think you're much bigger than chiropractic. So I hope no one gets offended by that statement because I know how committed and connected you are to your original profession. You're also an author, you're an entrepreneur, and you're a mom of three children. I revere you for your ability to live life and wade through the BS. Like we've had an opportunity of becoming friends and colleagues over the last short period of time, and you live a life that's based on abundance. Like I've met very few people who are like, there's no complaints about doing more. Like it feels like you got more room in your heart for love, more room in your heart, more room in your brain to do things, and media as well. So this is your hour, this is your time. But I want to highlight you and deliver you to our Genesis Nation so they can learn about your mission and vision in chiropractic, with your focus on maternal health and pediatrics, as well as what you're doing. And I'm going to reveal this after, in the spaces outside of chiropractic. So let's give me the story. Free to be. Tell me what is up.
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, thank you so much. It's really an honor to be here. And hello, Genesis Nation. It's nice to meet you if I haven't met you yet. No, I definitely, I guess a little backstory is I was a fourth generation cattle farmer. And so I grew up ranching, farming, all women owned in our family. And so
Wow.
one thing I learned at a very young age is grit. And so being able to just make things happen out of nothing. And so
Yeah.
whenever I was going into chiropractic school, I went into chiropractic school with a 13-page business plan. And, I gave it to my
That's awesome.
professor the very first day at Parker, and he, like, laughed. He was like, "You spelled subluxation wrong in this entire thing," and I was like, I was, like,
It's
little
13, it's 13 pages though, right? Come on.
so he was like, "Come talk to me in 3 years," and so I was like, "Fine." So I've always had this really, really strong vision of co-collaborating with other like-minded professionals, and I didn't really know exactly what that looked like until I found an amazing mentor in school, fell in love with pregnancy, birth, the whole natural process, because that's really our genesis of creation is birth and pregnancy, and I just fell in love with it. And so December rolls around, I'm about to graduate, and if you've heard any of my story, I just have always manifested that I wanted to practice in this like a Victorian home with a red mailbox with flowers out front. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I just really like I had a very clear vision where I was manifesting in school of what I wanted. And so I was scrolling through Craigslist at the VA and on my break, and I found this like blue Victorian building on Craigslist. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this is where I think like I should go check this out. And I'm still like in school about to graduate. And so I drive up to this place and it's this like breathtaking blue Victorian building. And I pull up and there's a red mailbox out front. And I walk up the stairs and there's flowers on the front porch. And I was like, what in the world? And so I walk in and the lady's like, hey, can I help you? I was like, yeah, I'm going to lease your basement. And she was like, who are you and what do you do? And I was like, no, 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 you don't understand. Like your mailbox, your flowers. Like this lady thought I was insane. So she was like, "Well, rent is $1,500 a month." I was like, "I don't have any money." And she was like, "Well, I mean, what?" I was like, "How about 800?" And she goes, "Well, how about 950?" And I was like, "All right." And so she was like, "Your rent starts in January." And so I had $6,000 that I had saved from my student loans. And that's all I had in my bank account. And so rent started in January. So I started paying rent. And you know, the licensure process, it takes 3 months. So January, February, March. And I finally opened in April after those 4 months of just like networking, marketing, like getting out in the community. I went, I went to dumpsters and like picked out furniture and like refinished it, refurbished it. Like I started this business on a shoestring. I got like a lucky hand poker in Vegas and like won a table at Parker Vegas. And so it's been a crazy journey, and it'll be 10 years this month that I've been in practice, and then 2 years into practice, I had just had my first baby and was suffering from like really severe postpartum depression. And in that moment, um, like in a very, very probably the darkest time of my life, the lady who owned the building, she said, "Hey, we're leaving. You have an opportunity to take over all 3 levels, or you can probably just get kicked out from somebody else." And I was like, "Oh gosh." Really, really struggling mentally, physically, like as a new mom, wasn't making my business was barely making enough to cover my basement overhead. So
And now,
I
now
was
you're
like,
about to expand to 3 times that. Yeah.
but I went home and I prayed about it. And like I had this, I started to, and this is the first time in my life I started to get really strong, clear visions from God, innate universe, you name it. And I woke up and I just saw the vision and it was so crystal clear. It was one of the first times I started trusting myself. And
Mm.
I went the next day and I said, "Hey, I'll take it. I got this crazy vision and I'm going for it." And so within those 4 weeks, I created this whole maternal wellness center. And so now we practice alongside pelvic floor PT, pediatric PT, massage, a spa, acupuncture, speech therapy, nutrition, homeopathy, IV ozone, and just like this whole little wellness center, and they're all maternal focused.
So
So started
everything surrounding pregnancy, maternity
yes, and
health,
it's
or
all
maternal health.
training.
That's amazing.
Yeah, exactly. So it's been a wild ride.
I haven't been there. I can imagine it like smells nice and looks nice, and it's all like,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
very
yeah,
feminine.
I can imagine that. So, three things just pop like stuck out to me in your opening. So, first of all, thank you for doing what you're doing, because it takes a different level of and this is speaking from my perspective. I trained in pediatrics and worked on kids, but I just never could gravitate towards it too much. So it really takes someone special. And if Genesis Nation, if you have the opportunity to see Dr. Courtney speak, she shares a really cool story about her actual births of three daughters. I'm not. We'll save that so that people can come see you
We'll save
speak.
that
But
for
it's
the
a
stage
yeah,
talk.
yeah, it's a really cool story to see the differences in what you've experienced as a mother. But the
Mhm.
three things that stuck out to me that you said, one is grit, another one is manifestation, and another one is vision. Um, so let's talk about grit first. What Because that's an important thing to me, because I've found that grit itself is unsustainable. Now you've been in business 10 years, right? So if it
Mhm.
was all grit, all grit, all grit, I feel like you would not look nearly as fresh and ready as you do right now and every time I see you. So what do you stack on top of grit too?
I
Because like it's
think
always there. It's always there, right? But what's on top of it?
I honestly think grit comes in at your hardest times. Whenever you feel like you're failing, whenever you really feel like giving up. It's like whenever you're going through that workout and it's like you are dying, your lungs are burning, you cannot finish, but you just get that last little 10%. And so I think grit comes in whenever you feel, because there's 100 times that I've wanted to quit. There's times that I've suffered so hard mentally that I'm just like, I just can't do this anymore. And I think that whenever you pause and you reconnect to your purpose, and then you kind of dig that last little 10% out, and then you push forward and you start just definitely moving forward, that's where that separates you from the other 90%. So I think, yeah, grit is not sustainable. That leads to
Alone.
burnout.
Alone, right? Yeah.
But it's a quality I think I have in my back pocket of whenever things get really hard. Like 3 years ago, I lost everything. Like my
Mm,
house, half the time with my kids, went through a divorce. Like I was living in a hotel.
mm.
And so I think that whenever that's a quality that I definitely call into like my being whenever things get really, really hard. I always am confident in myself to make it happen no matter what.
Love it. Is there anything that you've put on top of that, like mindset or technology or some little secrets of, because you just keep creating, and it's awesome to see that, and not just like you're an
Yeah.
artist, but you're also like you're creating business as well. It's part of your art. Is there
Yeah.
anything else that you can think of that you've used? Like when grit is like, okay, I'm in the corner, I'm crying because I'm a mess
Mhm.
and I want to quit. And yes, grit does come into play. You're like, okay, I'm going to reach into the tank deep because I know like if you raise cattle, it's like you're up at 4 in the morning and you're working no matter
Yeah.
what. Like the cattle need help and support. But are there tools, any other tools that you can think of and mention that you've used?
I think that your grit, when it's connected to vision and your purpose,
Mm.
that's where like the magic happens. Is because if you have no clarity of where you're going, then you're just going to be working to spin yourself in circles. And so
Love
if
it.
you have a true north, you have something that you're really anchored into and have a vision for your life, that can kind of pull you up and bring you back up. So you know where you're going.
So
Yeah.
that's a perfect segue into vision. And then we'll break into manifestation. So we're already lockstep here. So when you're working with vision, like for
Mhm.
yourself personally, um, how do you do it? Like, do you create a vision board? Do you write it down? Do you speak to God? Do you pray? Like what's involved with
Yeah,
all of it?
it really does.
Okay.
Like I'm such a physical person, and so was a college athlete. Like really, like whenever I'm moving my body, I feel like my mind works well. And so
Mm.
I'm a big runner, so I run every day. And a lot of my time, like if I'm not running with music, that's whenever I'm really getting into my vision and purpose and what I want. And so I think a lot of things.
When
It was.
you're running with music, did you say? With music, right?
I know whenever I go on my runs without music, I'm like, all right, brain, it's time to
Time to
create. All
create.
right.
Okay, cool. I
Yeah.
love that because I ski and run, and those are like kind of I don't use music either. Like my friends
Yeah.
are jamming to whatever down the hill, and I'm like listening to my
To your
heart and my
breath.
body, yeah, my breath and the snow and the sounds around me. So I love that.
And it comes through you. But yes, absolutely. And then I think the biggest thing is like when that vision comes through, it hits you hard and like it latches onto you. And there was this longest time whenever I was just, it was like I was underwater looking up and I could see the daylight looking up, but I was still underwater and I didn't know what was on the top of that water. And I was like,
Mm.
what is it? And it was just this feeling and it drove me crazy. I don't know if you ever experienced this, but I literally, it drove me nuts because I was like, I know there's something next. I know there's more. Like my practice is going great. I know. And it was just like, like I couldn't even describe to you how much it like bothered me every single day. So I would like run and move and breathe, but I had to go through certain life events, certain traumas, certain things to like it's kind of like when you go through the fire. Like when you pass through the fire, you get burned and you burn all the shit away and you're just like, okay, oh, here's what I was refining and it becomes
Time
very
to rise and rise from those ashes like the
exactly.
phoenix.
I
When
burned a lot of things down, and now I'm living on top of that water, sailing, if that makes
love it.
sense.
Yeah, 100%. And we're speaking metaphorically and sometimes like we learn through metaphor, right? Like
Yeah.
all these stories are passed down. So looking at the way that you experience it, it's my neuroscience brain kicks in with embodied cognition as a chiropractor, right? Like we're helping people experience their own bodies, and especially you with your working with babies who really have no experience of their own bodies except reacting to it, right? And as adults, you're creating that. And it's cool that I'm the same. I'm very similar. Like if I am creative in the gym, moving and doing animal flow, whatever, then I like sit down after and things just start coming right out. It's pretty cool. So now
They flow.
you take vision into manifesting something or who you're being or what you're doing. And there's something that
Mhm.
we're going to lean into here because you've manifested something beyond an office. We can talk about the other business stuff later, but I want to talk about something called Wander Learn, which is a really cool thing that I'm like super excited about to see the worlds that you've put together. And Genesis Nation, if you have not heard of Wander Learn, just buckle up right now. Tune into this. Turn the volume up. So you manage because I want people to see what's going on in the world. It's really cool. So I'm like I'm stoked that you're doing things like this in the chiropractic profession. So
Thank Yeah.
yeah, you're welcome. So you manifested this other company, right? This other
Mhm.
vision. This is part of your vision. This is part of your sailing, I'm assuming, right? Beyond
Yeah,
the office.
absolutely.
So tell us about Wanderlearn. This is your elevator pitch.
I think that you really touched on something before I dive into that. You almost finished it. The be, do, have, and so I feel
Yes.
like that's kind of what I went through of be who you want to be, do what you want to do, have what you want to have. And so I definitely have been walking in that the past 3 years. Went through a divorce 3 years ago, and it rocked me. It rocked my world. And so I have three young daughters, and we have 50-50 custody. And so the weeks I didn't have my girls, I would take myself to Tulum and I would just move, sweat, cry, scream, purify, like just do everything I could on these little mini retreats. I didn't realize what I was doing for myself. And when I came back, I just felt so much more clear and connected and just so much more myself. And that vision and that purpose was starting to like make its way through the clouds. And from there, I was like, okay, well, I'm really healing from this. I've really, really changed as a human being, and my clarity came through. I think other people need this. And so I started saying, hey, throwing this random wellness retreat in Tulum. If you want to just come work out, do yoga, eat organic, come on. And so that one sold out. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this is fun. Barely made any money. I just kind of covered my cost. And then I was like, well, what if I like do this like I love surfing. And so I was like, what if I just do a surf retreat in Costa Rica, but this time I add continuing education to it. And I was like, oh my gosh, well, oh, that one
That'd be
like
awesome.
really sold well. And I made like, hey, and I was like, oh, well, this is like a revenue generator. Let's do and I felt like it felt illegal. Like I was like, is this a life hack? Like I'm doing yoga, I'm surfing, I'm hanging out with cool chiropractors, I'm getting my CEs, and I'm making
Eating
money. And I
eating
was like,
organic food.
oh
Yeah.
my gosh, yeah, exactly. And I was like, what is happening? And so I started doing that. And I was like, I just got these crazy ideas of like, let's rent a yacht in Greece and like do CEs on yachts and like, let's go hiking in Switzerland and like do all these things. And so I had so many people just ask me, like, hey, how'd you do this? Like, this is really interesting. We want to start doing it. And so I got a lot of clarity of a platform. And so I was like, okay, well, let me just dive right in. So it's been a year. So a year, last April, I launched Wanderlearn. And whenever that like Genesis, like that beginning stage, like I hired a personal trainer. I worked out 3 times a day. I was super focused. I would like see all my patients during the day, cook dinner, put my kids to sleep, and then work in like 2 or 3 a.m. Like talk about like not sustainable.
Yeah.
But I was so clear. I was a machine. Like I literally would like work out 4 or 5 a.m., like go like work all day and then put my kids like all this stuff. So it was just a crazy time of life, but it was so latched into what I was doing because I knew chiropractors needed time away from their practices to
Yes.
heal the healer. They needed
Yeah.
time to travel. They needed like a business write off to go on a trip and more. And I realized I was like, oh my gosh, like people won't leave their practices because they'll lose money in theory if you don't set up your practice like that. But I was like, if I can create a sales pitch that if you can bring 10 to 20 people and make $10,000 in a weekend and you get a free vacation, then come on. And then I certified the CEs. So it kind of turned into this like really amazing business model where it's always profit forward. And the chiropractor is always making money if they meet the minimums. And they're getting time and a space to share their calling with their community. Because
Yeah.
what I've learned in is if you build a business around community and experience, it's very sustainable. And so whenever you bring in that community aspect and like what's more and what I have found on these retreats is I always make people really uncomfortable. And so I like putting people in these like really uncomfortable, like if you're afraid of heights, we're going zip lining, we're doing like the Tarzan swing, we're going whitewater rafting, we're diving with sharks, we are doing a Temazcal ceremony. Like I like, and then whenever you do
Those
this with
those
like a group
those things sound horrible. I don't want to join any of those things.
hard life.
Yeah. Well, and
But
from a participant's, right, like you're talking about it from the business model's perspective, from the chiropractor you would recruit to run it. And I want to shed light to the participants, like in practice, it's nice to disengage from being a parent and or
yes,
being a spouse and focusing on yourself, your body, your mind, your spirit. Like that's a really important time to heal the healer. I want to bring it back to be do have, because you sparked up my brain on that one. So I've always looked at it like, if you want to have something, it has
Mhm.
to go in that order. Who are you going to be? Then what do you need to do? Many of us go, and so that you can have what you want. It's almost like reverse engineering, right? You have to say, okay, here's what I want to have. I want to have this. Who do I need to be? Right. So when I heard your story, you had to be someone who is extremely sound of mind, body, facing your stuff because you got divorced, and running a business as well as starting another business. So be do have, and that's a lot of stuff that I teach my tribe as well, and have been working on. And the question that I always ask is, who am I? And
Mhm.
that's a form of self-inquiry that's been being done for eons through enlightened humans. So for our listeners out there, for those who want to create something out of their office or just be in a more creative manifesting space,
Mhm.
and you're crying in the corner and feel like you can't get any further besides just leaning on you and calling you, which I know that you're not necessarily available. Like, what are like your top three things that someone can do when they're stuck and know that they have this creative genius inside of them? Because obviously, if someone has built an office, they have a creative power, right?
That's always there. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And, that's what I have really, really found is taking myself outside of my day-to-day environment. And so that's why I travel so much is that whenever I am plucked out of my day-to-day, of my rhythms, I disrupt rhythms. And so whenever I disrupt rhythms, your brain fires at a different level. Whenever you're traveling, you kind of like you have a heightened sense of awareness. And so
Yeah.
whenever you are there, you start to like and if you can get into a quiet space and if you can kind of clear and kind of be for me it's always by the ocean and so a lot of my creation comes from like just being and sitting by the ocean so but if that's not available to you which is not available to a lot of us because we have kids and commitments and businesses um, getting outside, creating a space in your house, maybe it's a chair, a yoga mat, like whatever that is that you can come to, and the energy surrounding that is creation. So maybe it's a journal, maybe it's Palo Santo, maybe it's just a space that you can tap into all of your senses, maybe through movement, smell, things like that, and then you can get clear. And for me, I'm a writer too, and so like writing for me is like it flows really, really well. So if you can kind of write and kind of be in that space consistently, even if you don't want to, like the first 10 words are the hardest to write, and then
Yeah.
you can get flow from there.
I love it. Just commit to the time. And you gave us a lot of options, so which is great. I know we could go on for hours with these conversations. Well, I know I could because this stuff interests me. And it's just this is in the space of personal development, right? And most of our colleagues that we meet, they're into the personal development space, and you've taken it to the next level. So um check out Dr. Courtney Gowan. And if you have an opportunity, I just saw her speak at the ICPA with a really powerful presentation on manifestation. And my takeaway from that was, you quoted something along the lines, and I'm paraphrasing, but when you hit rock bottom, all that's left is the rock. And
Mhm.
that I took that with me, and I'm keeping that because it's like I'm just going to keep
You
getting up. And I say again, say
see
again.
what you're made of. It's
Yes,
the solid
yes.
you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. So check out Wander Learn. We're going to put all the links and everything below. So if you want to get away from the office and take a break and see what places like Costa Rica, Switzerland, and Patagonia, Chile have to offer for you and get continuing education credits, like that's a win-win-win instead of sitting on your computer. Because we all have gone to plenty of seminars in the decades of our career. So any final words of shares or anything you'd like to leave with our audience? You've left us a lot of pearls of wisdom here.
I think it's really hit me as like you have one life and one fingerprint to leave with this world and make it count. I think that's really what I've seen. And then I really just kind of hit me of just live and live well, live hard, and love hard. So yeah,
Awesome.
that's it.
Awesome. Thank you very much for your time. See you soon.
Absolutely. Thanks.